In Hebrew school, we were taught that the reason we celebrate the exodus of the slaves from Egypt with matzah is that the Israelites left Egypt in such a hurry they didn't have time to fully bake their bread. But the Seder begins with us holding up a matzah, breaking it and sharing it, and with us calling the matzah a poor man's bread. In this episode, we look at matzah through the lens of the simple meal offering in Leviticus. This framing adds new layers of meaning to the Passover Seder ritual. The clip culminates with a powerful reading from Mordechai Kaplan's 1941 New Haggadah, connecting matzah to broader themes of freedom and social justice. You might want to print this out for your Seder. If you find it of interest, be sure and listen to the complete episode. We're going down new territory here.
Right.
We are trying, and we're not going to connect all the dots. But if we're successful, we're giving a new lens to see this whole ritual of why it's called Lechem Oni. So I want to finish. We go back to the Seder now. You hold up the matzah, you break it in half just as you do with the grain offering. And then you say this amazing statement, halach ma'anya. And I am going to read, based on the research that we just did, how Mordechai Kaplan, who wrote the New Haggadah in 1941, while World War II was on, before the State of Israel, this is how he interpreted this ritual. He said, "Behold the matzah, symbol of the bread of poverty our ancestors were made to eat in their affliction, when they were slaves in the land of Egypt. Let it remind us of our fellow men who are today poor and hungry. Would that they could come and eat with us. Would that all who are in need could partake of this Passover feast. Let us resolve to strive unceasingly for that blessed day when all will share equally in the joy of Pesach, when poverty will be no more, when Eretz Yisrael will be upbuilt, and when all mankind will enjoy freedom, justice, and peace. Let my people go." We have
Wow.
dead. So this I'm reading out of the original New Haggadah that I grew up with before I became very religious and told my parents to use a traditional one. He says, "We have dedicated this festival tonight to the dream and the hope of freedom, the dream of the hope that have filled the hearts of men from the time our Israelite ancestors went out of Egypt. People have suffered, nations have struggled to make this dream come true. Now we dedicate ourselves to the struggle for freedom. Through the sacrifice be great and hardships many, we shall not rest until the chains that enslave all men are broken. But the freedom we strive for means more than broken chains. It means liberation from all those enslavements that warp the spirit and blight the mind, that destroy the soul, and even though they leave the flesh alive. For men can be enslaved in more ways than one. Men can be enslaved to themselves when they let emotions sway them to their hurt. When they permit harmful habits to tyrannize over them, they are slaves. When laziness or cowardice keeps them from doing what they know to be right. When ignorance blinds them so like Samson, they can only turn round and round in meaningless drudgery, they are slaves. When envy, bitterness, and jealousy sour their joys and darken the brightness of their contentment, they are slaves to themselves and shackled by the chains of their own forging. This resonated with me in terms of the
Wow.
stuff we were talking about. A poor
Right.
person is pure. He's not a slave to all these addictions. Men can be enslaved by poverty and inequality. When the fear of needs drives them to dishonesty and violence, to defending the guilty and accusing the innocent, they are slaves. When the work men do enriches others but leaves them in want of strong houses for shelter, nourishing food for themselves and for their children, and warm clothes to keep out the cold, they are slaves. He's really focused on the imperfections of poverty in a way that I think reads so beautifully and directly from this simple offering of grain. Men can be enslaved by intolerance when Jews are forced to give up their Jewish way of life, to abandon their Torah, to neglect their sacred festivals, to leave off rebuilding their ancient homeland. They are slaves. When they must deny that they are Jews in order to get work, they are slaves. When they must live in constant fear of unwarranted hate and prejudice, they are slaves. How deeply these enslavements have scarred the world. The wars, the destruction, the suffering, the waste. Pesach calls us to be free, free from the tyranny of our own selves, free from the enslavement of poverty and inequality, free from the corroding hate that eats away the ties which unite mankind. To me, this is the simple grain offering. This is the message in spades.